Greetings everyone to an update. I'm not going to call it a Grimm Weekly because I think I'm going to step back from doing those because I'm just going to be so busy and I don't want to so one thing I have realized about my situation and my mental health is that I need to take things off the table to feel less stressed. And so one fairly simple thing to take off the table is the sort of compulsion to do a weekly video. And so I'm going to do that. Also because, I am sort of not plotting because I'm enjoying it a lot. I'm reading The Trollop, and I'm still reading it. I'm going to be reading it for a while. And I have read some other things that I'll tell you about in a minute. Read mainly, so what I fall into it reading wise is I read something text wise and all kinds of other stuff, sort of articles and stuff, and then I also listen to something, and those go quicker, and I like to read them as well or have the book handy. But that's kind of it. I gave myself, and I'm still giving myself permission to read something else if I want to. But to be honest, The Trollop is just very sustaining and comforting. It just hits the right spot and it's not, whenever I think I want to get away from that stodgy world, which isn't really that stodgy because it's so psychologically nuanced, so it doesn't seem that stodgy, at least to me not. I mean, I'm sure most of my kids will be like, this is the most boring thing I've ever had to read if I made them read it. The school kids, I mean, the college kids, the 18-year-olds. Anyway. So, yeah, I'm stepping back from that for all the obvious reasons, mainly that I'm going to be so busy. And that's not to say that I'm going away. I mean, there is this kind of contrarian, I'm going to get really busy. I really want to post or make a video, just kind of, I'm sure some of you understand that. Another thing that kind of happened, and I'm glad it did, is that we've stepped back from doing the Grimm talk, which was sort of making me anxious, and it just didn't happen. He's very busy, I'm busy, and I don't know if it might still happen. And I could always make my own Grimm video. And then there's this Lily here who I think she might be a little under the weather, but she's fine. One thing that I noticed is she is super clingy. Yes, she's a very clingy, and we don't want to see your behind. No, we don't want to see that. We definitely don't want to see that. We don't want to see Lily's behind. So I apologize for inconsistency and changing everything, but it'll all be fine. So let's see. I do want to give you an update, a date while I'm here. Let's see. So yeah, the Trollop. Let me talk a little bit about Trollop because I can always talk about Trollop. So I was just reading a little bit. We're still moving on through this the put upon Duke and the fact that his daughter wants to marry someone he doesn't think is good enough for her, even though Trollop has created this supremely. He must be good looking, I'm assuming, but also kind of he's very gentlemanly, yet he doesn't have rank or money. So he has the sort of, he's smart. He's fairly smart. Like in contrast to the son, his friend Silverbridge is the Duke's son, Lord Silverbridge, and he's also interesting. But he's a doofus. He's a male bimbo. He's like good looking. He's not awful. He sort of has a sweetness to him, which is why the smart woman who is connected to him, this other character, you could sort of see she's like, oh, he's a sweet boy. Oh, he's so naive. But he's very unable to grow up. And it's sort of like the typical rich kid syndrome of him. His father is, I really like the Duke. So I've said that he's sort of a negative character, but it's only because he's sort of, there's nothing to him except duty, service, and work. He wants to be a good worker. He wants to be of service. He's a liberal, which I like that because he's not conservative. Even though he's the Duke, he's like super wealthy and super privileged, and yet he's a liberal, which is interesting. That's Trollop doing that kind of stuff. And so what's interesting about Trollop is that he'll have this character like the Duke, and I like that he's given this person so much space in this book because I do think he's interesting. I think a lot of his characters are super interesting, like the one in Barsetshire, the crazy, very sort of, and interesting despite the fact that, for example, this one in Barsetshire, and even the Duke, they're patriarchs of the highest order, and yet there's still something that intrigues me about them. In the case of the Barchester guy, the I'm talking about the very poor guy at the end, the main guy of this last book. But he's super smart, but he hasn't been able to sort of be a success in society for some reason. There's something sort of holding him back. And so in this book, he is able to make a sort of a doofus, dumb, not so smart character like Silverbridge interesting, because you see the goodness that is also there in him. So he adds more and more nuance to his characters. And then the father becomes more interesting because we sort of, with him it's more like you're going to see how he responds to the fact that his daughter wants to marry this not of rank and very poor person, but who's smart and gentlemanly. And his own son is neither of those things. I mean, he's kind of a gentleman, I guess, but he's fallen. He's spending too much money. He's gambling on horses. He's sort of addicted to flighty things like horses. And even the younger son is kind of falling into this. They're not good with money. Like the Duke sort of, why can't people just be good with money? Which is so interesting to me. So coming at it from someone who likes this Austrian writer Stifter. So one thing I noticed about him is that whenever money, and he himself in his life wasn't very good with money apparently, but his characters, specifically the sons of fathers, there's always this little short scenes of, it sort of said, the son was extremely good with his money and he was able to household, keep within the budget really well. There's never any, this is the whole, the lack of tension in Stifter, which is sort of, there's no tension around sort of mundane things like money. Everything is, the people are sort of supremely good with this stuff. And yet there's still other stuff going on. Stifter's a different writer than Trollope. But it's just one thing that, because of how in Trollope, the fact that people don't know how to do, they fall into, specifically men, can't handle their money. It comes up quite a bit in Trollope. And I think, was that all I wanted to say about it? And so there's just these scenes where you sort of see how he sort of makes them so interesting. And we had the scene where we kind of are in Silverbridge's, the son's head, and that's what made us see him struggle to be good. And what's happening right now is that he feels sad for or sorry for his father, but he's not being fair to the sister. No, so the sister's the one who loves this man, and she's also kind of described as she's a mix of her mother and the father, and so that's why she's sort of very stubborn in a certain sense. And it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. He's just setting the scene in so that it's a soap opera in the sense that however long it takes, you're down for sort of seeing how it will all play out. Let's see. And so what happened was the typical thing that happens to me. So I started this book. It's only my second Gaskell because I'd had a bad experience with me not liking Mary Barton. I don't know why. I thought it was a mess of a novel. I didn't like how it all went. I didn't like the goodiness of it at the end. So I was sort of fearful of ever trying another Gaskell, but this is a lot better. And I am listening to this mainly, but then now I was waiting for this copy, my style of copy, to come, the Oxford one, because I wanted to have it in front of me to look up the stuff. But just listening to it, it's surprising. It strikes me as surprisingly modern. Like I have to keep reminding myself, this is even more so than Trollope, for example. And maybe because it's female-centric more. But like I have to keep reminding myself that this is a Victorian novel. Granted, it's a little, it's 1860s, so it's not that late. It's actually probably earlier than Trollope. I don't know, I'll have to see when the Trollope was written. But it focuses on this one woman, Molly. And of course now, because I waited a while and I have another read that I'll show you in a minute, I've kind of forgotten a little bit, but I really liked what I had fallen into here with Molly and her father, and what's going to happen with her and the whole thing. So I'm glad I picked that up or decided to listen to it and now have it as a book too. And then let me show you the book that I'm also reading. Here's Lily. Let me say hi, Lily. Yeah, how you doing, Lily? How you doing? Are you want to say hi to other people? You want to say hi? She's looking at me, that's why. You want to say hi? Okay, let me see if I can without stopping, get the book that is over here on my little shelf. Sorry for closeness. And so in the meantime, while I was waiting for this book to arrive, I always go and look on my shelf and see if I can find an Audible of a book that's on my shelf, and I did. And it's this lovely book, Rose Cottage. This is also my second Mary Stuart only, and the only other one I read, I think it's called Nine Coaches, and that one, I didn't hate it, but I didn't like it as much. I'm really enjoying this. This is really good, and it's sort of a mystery, but the setting and the people are more important. Like the setting's very important. This little village that the main lady comes back to. So it's about this it's immediately post Second World War, and this main lady is coming back to her village, and in the village she was sort of in a lower position because she was related to the cook of a big house. But in the meantime, she's gone away and had been married to someone who was very well off, who unfortunately she lost in the war. So she's a war widow who's come up in the world, which is indicated by the fact that in the town she's called Kathy, and then her married name was Kate because her husband didn't like Kathy, because Kathy has a whiff of the lower classes, I guess. I do notice that I have never met a Kathy as a student. I've never had a Kathy. I have had at least dozens of Katies and Kates and Caitlins, but never a Kathy. Maybe a Kathleen now and then, but Kathy's just gone by the wayside in terms of names. Names are very sort of cyclical. And yeah, so this is great. And I know that there are quite a few people who like Mary Stuart and Elizabeth Gaskell out there. I'm thinking of Kate Howe. Because I just know about how Kate Howe likes Charlotte Young, and I'm intrigued by her for also genealogical reasons, but I won't get into that now. I want to go back to Young too at some point, because the one I picked up was a bit too religious. I can go with a fair ways down that trail, but not too much. But anyway, this is lovely. And I want to listen to it. I'm almost at the end of this because it's short. And so that was what I picked up in the meantime while I was waiting for Wives and Daughters. The only other thing I want to tell you about is a couple of books that I purchased because I was thinking about what else, what does the future hold in terms of reading. And one person who I've always wanted to go back and kind of devote some time to is the British writer Iris Murdoch, who I just think will be kind of up my alley. And I have one of her books on here as a paperback called The Green Knight. And I've read one other one. Was it called The Black Prince? I don't know if I remember it. I don't think I did like it, but she is quite dense, and it's sort of psychodrama type stuff because she's, that's how she is. And so I decided to sort of try and establish a collection a little bit of her works. So, kind of get a nice group of them going. And I was looking around trying to do them in order, but I don't know if this is completely in order, but these are, I think, two early works that I got from Etsy, and I spent not that much money, but a little bit more than usual because I got nice hardcover copies of them. Because what I was surprised is, there are Penguin copies, but there are no Oxford ones of hers. But anyway, these are the ones that I got from the Etsy. And I don't know much about these novels. So The Nice and the Good. So this is a sort of a replica of the famous painting. That's the first one. It's an early one, and that's the hardcover, and I'm looking at the underneath. It's very, very, very plain, but I like that one. And then the second one that I like even more, but I like them both, is The Italian Girl. I do like that cover of that one. So these are hardcovers. This is Viking, and this is Shadow and Windus copies of Iris Murdoch that I will add to my TBR. Maybe the cart, which is actually turned into the bookshelf. I've rearranged my room a little bit over here. So yeah. Anyway, so that's all for me for the foreseeable future. But you know what? I will pop up at some point. I still have ideas that I have been contemplating, but I'm also kind of gearing up for my 3 classes that I have 3 classes, but I'm going to teach 2 on one day and 1 on the other day. So I'll be teaching Monday through Friday every day, and I'll be busy. I have about 85 students, 86 at last count altogether, which is a fair amount of names and faces I have to deal with. That sounds terrible, but you know, and yet on the other hand, it's my last year. I'm also still sort of quasi participating in this group of faculty who wanted to research the value or the status of reading and why people don't read and what can we do about people not reading, or you know, especially young people, the whole thing of young people not reading, and also just something that came out recently, how few people read for fun. I think a lot of people listen to stuff more than they read, which is, you know, I do that too, to a certain, and it's because it's easier, you know, it's just you could do other things, but I still enjoy putting, you know, turning my eyes to the page and having a good old-fashioned read, even though I don't do it that much either. I'm just like the rest of us. Hope everyone is doing well. Sorry for the inconsistency in hoping I would be able to do this, but I think it's the right decision and it's all fine. It's all good. I hope everyone's fine, and I will see you at some point in the future. Bye.